in the 10 years leading up to my transition out of the Marine Corps, I was able to put together the best principles to achieve career success in the civilian battlefield. Since then, and in the last 5 years, after my transition, I have successfully used these principles to help hundreds of military veterans achieve their career goals. Now, it's your turn to adopt these principles and make this playbook your own, so you can achieve your greatest career potential. Regardless of military branch, whether you are currently serving or already out of the military, whether you want a job, further your education, start a business, or find a different path altogether, this channel is designed for you. You can now stop feeling anxious, frustrated, and overwhelmed with the 5 W's of your career transition. Through this channel, I will share with you the same principles that have made so many other military veterans successful in their transition. Join me as we master the military transition process through the 6 phases in this playbook. I look forward to you joining our network, sharing your path, and ultimately achieving the success you seek. Please subscribe to the channel to join the journey, and remember, we never leave a fellow veteran behind. Good evening, and welcome to the Transition Success Podcast, the official podcast of the Military Veteran Transition Playbook, where we engage, train, mentor, and coach military veterans for transition to civilian life. I am your host, Cesar Nader, and with me today is Abe Erickson, our producer. How you doing, Abe?
I'm doing well, Cesar. How are you?
Doing fine. I'm finishing up a 2-week circuit tour of some of our customers all the way across the coast, from the West Coast back home. And I had a great event last week. I went to California, Palm Springs. Don't blame me for going to Palm Springs. But the VIB Network, the Veterans in Business Network, had an amazing inaugural event. And I got to tell you, Rebecca put in an amazing show. For a first event, she sold out. The setup was amazing. The logistics were amazing. The execution was amazing. I'm a very big critic of putting events for veterans. And there are a few great organizers, leaders that put these events well. And Rebecca did an amazing job with that event. So I wanted to give her a great shout out. I'm looking forward to going to your event next year, Rebecca. So if you're listening, I'm very much looking forward to supporting that event for all of your audience, our military veterans audience. By the way, the VIB network helps veterans connect with agencies, and it helps them better understand the government contracting sector. If you're a business owner, a veteran business owner, small business owner, this event was amazing. It connected veterans with resources, with information, with agencies, other businesses, and I was very pleased to be a part of that. It was an amazing honor to be one of the speakers at that event. So
that's great, Cesar. So we just need to do a quick follow-up from last week. Now you were required to do some push-ups, and you did those, as I recall, correct?
Yes, you saw me struggle through the 20 push-ups. I'll admit to my audience that even though I'm a Marine and I'm retired now, it takes me a little longer to warm up to those first 5. I used to be able to do 20 in like 2 seconds. Now I do 2 in 60 seconds, and then I have to do the other 18. Like breathe and huff and puff.
Yeah, there you go. It was a sight to see, but he did it.
Hoorah, Semper Fi. All right, Abe, so let's get into our first topic and get rolling. I know we have some live audience currently, so tell me what we got going on.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you for joining us. If you are live on YouTube right now, please feel free to post questions in the live chat. We are monitoring that, and we look forward to answering those questions throughout the night. So Cesar, we want to get started a little bit to get on topic with the Military Veteran Transition Playbook and talk about phase 1, which is about the when. Now, in the playbook, we talk about needing to start your transition process actually 18 to 24 months before you plan on exiting your branch of service. So Cesar, can you tell us a little bit about why it's important to give yourself that 1.5 or 2 years to actually make that transition?
Thank you for that. startup on the MVTP. And when we finish the program, we're going to share with you a quote as part of our segment that is going to come to play for this particular question. A lot of times in the military, we don't plan ahead for the one thing that's the most important to us individually. We plan for combat. We train for it. We operate on a very limited schedule. Sometimes we have what's called the rapid planning process, where we have to do an entire 6-phase plan within, I think it's 6 hours. And we are very good at planning for others, planning for the mission, and planning for execution in every area of our career. But we fail to plan ahead for our own transition. And that is just the cross we bear as veteran leaders, because we want to take care of everyone else before we take care of ourselves. But the reality is that in order for us to do an effective transition out of the military, you have to plan 2 years out. Why is that? Abe, as you know from the 6 on YouTube regarding the transition process, you can't just start with, I'm going to put on a suit, I'm going to get my resume, and I'm going to go interview. And I'm going to throw myself in the fire and see things fair out. Oh, I'm also going to call all the people I know in my network. I'm going to blast out on LinkedIn that I'm transitioning, and I'm going to hope that something happens. That's always the reverse planning that we do. We plan them out 3 months out, maybe 6 months. Some of us plan 9 months, and those better planners for transition start 1 year to 2 years out, because they understand that in order to the phase 6 of our planning process, you have to start with when. When do you want to transition out? You got to look at your personal picture, your financial picture, your family picture, and your career picture. Those are the 4 quadrants that I talk about in the when phase. Once you have a good complement of those 4 quadrants, and you understand where you are personally, financially, career-wise, and family-wise, you will be effective at understanding then in phase 2 who you are. And it takes time to reprogram what we do in the military versus who we are internally, our core. What is our core? I see tons of resumes, Abe, from veterans that really translate their military profession. They talk in acronyms, they talk in units. I worked in 2-4. Imagine a 21-year-old hiring manager at Google. That's what you got to picture. A millennial is going to interview you. Even if you're not looking for that kind of job, you've got to set your mind to that millennial interviewing you. And so in order to prepare to act in phase 6, you got to know when you want to get out. You want to know who you are, phase 2. You want to know what you want to do, phase 3, which is where most of us start 6 months out. I'm going to stop there at the phase 3, because as you know, we always want to say, what are we going to do, right? How many people you know that first start with, okay, here's what I want to do in my next career path, instead of who they are?
Yeah, absolutely. And so just something that I was thinking about, Cesar, as you were talking is, and this is so simple, but one day you're going to wake up and no one's going to be there to give you an order except you and maybe your spouse, right?
And the challenge we have with that is that veterans wait for that mission, right? Here's the mission. There's the what. And once they have that mission, they want to execute with everything else. In the Marine Corps, we call it SMEAC. Situation, mission, execution, administration, logistics, and command and signals. And we use that for everything we do. And it all starts with the commander's intent and the mission, right? What are we supposed to do? Well, we answer the 5 W's. But in this case, we have a hard time figuring out how to transition early enough, because see, also the military, the services are not in the business of helping veterans transition. It's not their job. What's the job of the services? To train, equip the force to execute the battles that are going to be won for our country. They do a great job with the resources they have in helping veterans transition with a 1 week transition seminar, course, workshop, call it whatever you want, at every base and location to help those veterans transition. Now, you can go to those transition seminars as often as you want, about a year out. Some services and bases do it even 2 years out. You know that I went to the transition, I did it 3 times when I was enlisted and 4 times when I was an officer. I could have gotten a degree in transition from those bases. You know,
Do they have a degree in transition? Is that, or oh wait, that's MVTP, baby. That's a Military Veteran Transition Playbook.
Nice plug. If they had one, I would tell you some of us will get a degree in it, because the anxiety we feel from going to a 1 week event where we have 100 questions and there are 50 veterans there just with us, all of them in different phases, different levels, different compositions of their transition process. We want to give everybody else a chance to ask their questions. We want to give everybody else the chance to get their transition done, and we'll ask later. But we leave with the anxiety that 1 week wasn't enough. You know, it takes, in the Marine Corps, it takes 13 weeks to make a Marine. It takes 6 months to make a Marine officer. You got 1 week to get out. That's your transition course, 1 week. Now, I'm going to support all my services in the transition program because they do a great job with the resources they have. I see some of the great people that are out there doing transition for veterans, and they pour their lives into it. But the truth is that it's not enough. In doing it 3 months out or 6 months out, it's not enough. You got to start 2 years out, because you have to get through these phases. The first phase, the when, has to be 2 years out. You don't plan for an operation when you execute it. We plan for operations that we have on the books, we call op plans. We have them on the shelves, and they are sitting there, and we review them the moment we get back from the previous operation. That's usually a year out. And imagine that's just for an operation that we've been doing year and year and year. Example, Fall Eagle in Korea. It's an exercise we do every year. And we plan it every year. But we break out the book as soon as we come back from the operation to do what's called a hot wash. And we look at what we did right, what we did wrong, and what we can do better. And then we go into the planning mode a year out for an operation that we've been doing every single year. So why would you take only 6 months, 9 months to plan the most important mission of your life? Look at your wife, look at your husband, look at your kids. They're counting on you, and you're having that anxiety that sits with you at night. You can't go to bed, you can't go to sleep because you're worried that you're not doing enough. But what's on the back end of not doing enough is that you don't know where to go, what to do. The Military Veteran Transition Playbook gives you that pattern. And we called it the playbook because it makes sense. You need a playbook with different plays for different levels, different stages, different compositions of your family, your situation, your location. What do you want to do? When do you want to do it? Are you 20-something, 30-something, 40-something? That's the key. It has to be flexible, adaptable, but it has to start 24 months out. Some of you are going to tell me, well, Cesar, look, it sounds ideal. It's great. It's great in a package. It looks great on a brochure. But the reality is we can't do it. I'm in Iraq. I can't do that. Hey, remind me, where are our viewers coming from? Do we have any viewers outside the U.S.?
We do, actually, and thank you for all those that are watching live and watch the channel. We get viewers mostly from within the United States, but we are pleased to say that we do have viewers coming from Ecuador, Japan, Ukraine, Russia. We're grateful. This audience is growing beyond just those who are currently residing in the United States. So if you're serving overseas, you may have to put more emphasis into it than those in the States because you're separated from the resources. So you really have to put emphasis on that.
into that point, some of our viewers are serving right now, this very moment, at a U.S. embassy, at a security forces post, at a naval station, at a submarine. They might be underwater right now with some super secret Wi-Fi capability, but still watching our show. They may be assigned in the middle of nowhere with a spider antenna and a sat radio, and they're watching our show. And they're listening to me while I'm sitting here telling them that you got to plan 2 years out. And I am telling you, you can. But you have to start early. No matter where you are, what your status is, what your level. And I mean whether you're enlisted, officer, first termer, career service member, you are single, married, with a dog, with kids, married with the dogs and with kids, not married with kids, separated, divorcing. You have to start early. This is the one mission you cannot plan at the last minute. You cannot just throw in a suit, get an image consultant to help you figure out what's the best attire to wear for the interview. You cannot start picking where you want to work at the last minute. You have to start with when, and it has to start 2 years out. And once you get through those 6 months between the when, the who, and the what, then comes the hard road of phase 4, the how. That is your roadmap. But you can't get a roadmap until you know what that roadmap looks like. Break out that map, take the compass, you know where you want to go now, right? You know the when, you know the who. Now you map out the what. Do you want to go get a job? Do you want to be an entrepreneur? Do you want to retire and write a book? Do you want to be overseas and go to your last post where you felt like you really had a career opportunity? Now, listen how complicated it is in the how. In the how, we break out the 4 areas that you can actually expand to. But in one of the areas, the get a job, let's call it the get a job sub branch. There are 4 different areas where you can tailor your resume for the job that you're seeking. Let me give you an example. If you want to go work for the government, some of my listeners know how hard it is to get that resume that has to be 5-10 pages long. USAJOBS is where you go put in your resume and you go apply for jobs. If you're disabled, you get that 10-point preference. But if you don't know this stuff at the beginning, you won't know how to do this effectively, and you will struggle like many of us have in the past. That's if you want to go work for the government. Let's say you want to go work for the private sector, a whole different type of resume. If you want to go work for a nonprofit, a whole different type of resume and a whole different type of interview process. If you want to go work for your local community, firefighter, police, emergency management, a totally different aspect of how to break out your roadmap to understand how are you going to navigate that phase 6, the act where you really want to start. You just want to start going on interviews, getting job opportunities, and saying yes or no. I'm telling you, if you want a job, do that. If you want a career, you have to start early. So in the how, phase 4, you learn how to develop your roadmap. We take you through all of the phases. So you don't have to pick anything early on. In the what, you decide, do you want a job? Do you want to be an entrepreneur? We talked to you about how to be an entrepreneur. Look at the 4 sub phases in the entrepreneurship area. You can be a small business owner. You can be a consultant. You can be an investor. You can be an advisor. There are different areas where you can work for yourself. But for example, you have to understand the difference between the 1099 and the W-2, between salary and compensation. I talked about quality of life and standard of living. All those things have to come into your planning process. Planning is indispensable for your transition. And the better you plan, the better you're ready for the bumps on the road. Now, once you get through the how, that's when you go talk to your mentors. Because I'll tell you one big mistake that I see a lot of our fellow veterans do. They have great mentors, right? They have former generals that they work for. They have folks that are now in high places on Fortune 500 companies. They even know business owners that are exceptionally well positioned for a job. and I'll share part of my story in a minute. But they want to go talk to them at the onset of their transition decision. I'm going to get out. I'm going to go on interviews. I interviewed with a company, and I give Gabe Patricia, one of my mentors, a lot of credit for his decision not to hire me. And I know if Gabe is listening, he's probably thinking that he really made the right decision. I remember going to interview with him, and I wasn't prepared for what it is that he needed as a company owner and in his company. And you know what he told me, and this is the reason why I always go back to playing this. He said to me, Cesar, you don't want to sit in the bus. You want to drive the bus. And I already have people on this bus that are very senior. I have sergeant majors of the Marine Corps. I have folks that are working for me that are very up there. And you're gonna be a disruptor. And he was right. You know, I took it personally because obviously, as a veteran, with all the medals and all the achievements, you achieve a rank, you're great, right? You think you're great, but you're not prepared for what's out there. So I learned early on that what I thought of myself was not the same thing that other people thought of myself. I'll give you a great book to read for those of you who want to really kind of humble yourselves about where you are today. Read the book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There, from Marshall Goldsmith. A great book that humbles you in understanding that all the medals that you got won't come into play in your interview. At least not some interviews. It may come into play in a specific interview if you want to be a firefighter, a policeman, maybe some other ones that I'm not covering here today. But the fact is that you need to start learning how to speak to them. And you learn that by planning ahead. The 2-year planning process of your transition needs to start at that level, not 6 months out. Then finally, after you get the how, that's when you go talk to those mentors. You see, that's another difference that people don't understand. There are mentors and there are advisors. I talked about the 3 to 5 board of advisors that I like people to get when they're early in their transition process, so they can help you figure out who you are. Those 3 to 5 people are people that you trust, not just your wife or somebody in the military that you serve with. You want folks who are already out, but you also want people you can trust with the facts of who you are and who you were before you put that uniform. Because you may be a sailor, an airman, a soldier, a Marine, a coastie, but when you take that uniform off, you're still that same individual that joined before you put that uniform on. So you have to go back to your core competency, the essence of who you are, so you can figure out what career best suits you. Complement that with your leadership toolbox, all your skills and abilities, and then put together that comprehensive package of who you are, so you can figure out what you want to do, how you're going to do it, and then the mentorship process begins. When you go to a mentor with, here's what I'm getting out, here's who I am, here's what I want to do, and here's how I'm working to get it done. Can you help me get there? That's when that mentor can pick up the phone and help you with just one phone call. But if you cannot answer those first 4 questions for him, when, who, what, and how, they may not be able to help you as effectively. And I'll be happy to share stories about how I interviewed with Procter & Gamble, and 2 executives were asking me, how did I reach them on LinkedIn by being able to network effectively. But they couldn't help me because I still didn't know who I wanted to be at that time. And I learned that later in the process of those over 100 screenings and 40 plus interviews, that I really needed to understand who I was before I can go market myself. Because a lot of times we ask the question, aftermath. How can I market myself to employers? It's an afterthought that we put because we don't understand who we are, what we want to do, and how are we going to get there. The how, by the way, is something you do before you get out, so you can cover those potholes on the road to your transition success. And after the mentorship phase 5, then you can act. The last 90 days of your 2-year transition process are where you execute all of your planning phases. You bring in your effective resume, you bring in your your look, your LinkedIn profile, your interview skills. That's when you build that brand, your brand, who you are, what you're going to be doing. So, uh, in closing, Abe, I think that it's easy to say it like I told the audience earlier that 24 months just sounds so well put together. Our MBTP, as you know, has a modular aspect to it.
Yeah.
You can take those 6 phases, compress the first 3, and expand the last 3. Or take phase 1, win, and jump to phase 4, how, and go right into phase 5 and 6. Or skip phase 5, which is the mentorship, and compress them to fit you. We made it scalable, adaptable, flexible for you because we understand that not all of us have 2 years. I advocate for 2 years, but if you don't have them, we'll help you through, compress it as best as we can with the most important phases for your career.
Yeah, and Cesar, I think one of the things that's important for our viewers to understand is if you're a veteran and you've already exited from your branch of military service, all of this still applies. Yeah, you're obviously the 24 and 18 months. That one doesn't apply, but the whole MVTP program will benefit you. I mean, you get to find out who you are, and because you know who you are, you really get to help identify what it is you want to do, and then you're in a position to negotiate for that location, salary, and job satisfaction. That will help you on the career side really find out what it is that you want to do. And then, of course, with family, you're able to make that better decision. So even if you've exited, the Military Veteran Transition Playbook is for you as well.
I will tell you this, and I like that you bring up the points that we've talked about from other shows and some of the videos I put out there about location, job satisfaction, and salary being the top 3 priorities that you have to focus on before you even start. If you don't know, that's okay. There's a formula for how you can decide objectively and effectively what is your top priority, right? Some people don't want to say that their priority is salary because it sounds a little too greedy. But the fact is, you got to be honest with yourself. This is where your board of advisors, your personal board of advisors comes into play. They can call your bluff. They can tell you if you are BSing them. And your wife is going to tell you, wait a minute, what do you mean you just want job satisfaction? We need to feed the family.
That's right.
When I reach down to that well, I want to know that I can actually get something out of it. You know, the family is used to being able to have their 2 paychecks a month, their 30 days leave, all their stuff covered. All they have to go do is go on base and do their services. So they need to know that you understand what your priorities are. In order to get your priorities in order, you have to go through that exercise. We won't talk about that today. Maybe we should make a note to make sure we discuss the 3 priorities in detail on our next show. And we'll get some feedback from our listeners based on what they want to hear.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
To your point, if you transition out already, some of the best and most effective transitions that I have seen now are veterans who understood how their transition was not as effective at first, and they took a step back and realized what they did wrong. I have a good friend of mine, and Tony. Tony went through a tough transition. He was senior ranking guy. Let's just say that, and he felt like he had it. He got out. He was good. Those are the guys that worry me too, because they look like they have it all together, but they don't show the anxiety they're feeling. They have to keep calm, cool, and collected because they're leaders in their own right. They have to look like they have no fear and no anxiety, because if they do, they know that the folks behind them or underneath them can be worried about them. You got to stop that. You got to stop that. Tony had a hard time, and when he transitioned, he went through a deep depression. And I literally had to dig him out of that with some other friends of ours to make sure that he could say, sometimes you got to slap him around and say, listen, you're not doing well. Stop pretending. Stop faking it. Get yourself back on track. He took a step back. We had a couple of talks at a local Starbucks. Local Panera. And he really came, it was come to Jesus moment. He said, Cesar, it's true. I'm lost. I thought I had it. I thought it was going to be this amazing transition, and I'm lost. But once he identified a struggle, he was successful. He he did a great job at growing his business. And look what happened. This is a guy who got out. So we're talking about now your transition. You're out of the military, right? And you feel like you have made a couple of mistakes in your transition and you want to know how to get back on track. He took a step back. He said, okay, let me look at these phases. And he got himself back into the phase that he was in. And he was successful in his business execution, but then he realized something that a lot of us realize. See, because he didn't do that order of priority we talked about, and he went for, say, salary, he wasn't spending time at home. Extremely successful in business. But when the wife calls and says, hey, are you coming home? He's like, hey, baby, I got another course I got to teach. I gotta get the business going. He realized at some point that quality of life doesn't equate to standard of living. You don't have to make a ton of money to have a quality of life. Could measure it with your style and your priorities. The idea that you have to focus on your health, on your family, on your well-being, and produce enough to have the quality of life that you deserve, the quality of life that you want. A lot of times we feel like, okay, well, if we make enough money, then we won't have to worry about things. Everything comes with a price, no pun intended. So Tony struggled and he got himself back, and now he pulled back. He took a government job, loves it, been doing it for 5 years since he retired. And he loves it. His schedule is predictable. He can be home at the time that he wants to. He doesn't have to work on the weekends. And though that business model was exceptionally good, sometimes it doesn't matter. If your priority is not salary, it's job satisfaction or location, then you learn to get a career. If you choose wrong, you just get a job. So with that said, if you want to learn more about the Military Transition Playbook, or if you have a question about transitioning from military to civilian life, please subscribe to our YouTube channel right here. And during the live show, you can participate with our growing community and ask questions. We will do our best to answer them live on the show. This is when you go to YouTube channel, make sure you type in Military Veteran Transition Playbook. And that will bring you up to our page, and you can subscribe, and we'll be happy to answer your questions. And as we grow our audience, we'll be able to chat with you both live and offline to make sure that you get an effective transition process.
Yep.
All right, Abe, let's get to the next segment.
Good.
We
Yes.
music that Dave Ramsey has, so we'll just
there you go. Yeah, so we actually have a question that came in through LinkedIn. Okay, so if you're watching right now, please go connect with Cesar on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/in/Cesar Nader. Join his professional network. You can ask him questions at any time there, so please do so. So our first question from there is from Ari. Now this is actually a really important one, Cesar, because many of our military personnel have received clearances, and they wonder, how can they find out after they've already transitioned if their clearance is still active? So what advice do you have for our viewers tonight, Cesar, on checking on that?
Ari, thanks for the question. That's a question that plagues a lot of veterans with a clearance. So some jobs in the military require clearance, a secret, top secret, some confidential, but really the ones that are mostly concerned are the ones that have secret clearances and top secret clearances. And I won't go into more detail unless the audience out there wants us to talk about it. But if you're still active duty and you want to know what's the status of your clearance, how long is it still active for, when is it due for a PR, a periodic review, you want to go talk to your SSO or whatever your unit calls the Special Security Officer at the Special Security Office. And you want them to look into your JPAS, your Joint Personnel Adjudication System. In there, you have a file that says, when was your clearance adjudicated or granted, and how long is it going to be until it is due for review? Now, I'll say a couple of things, and some of my SSO, FSO professionals out there will correct me, but a secret clearance lasts for 10 years. A top secret, 5 years, meaning you have to reapply or periodic review. You got to have it reviewed. Now, because OPM, the Office of Personnel Management, is a little backlogged, they are letting some clearances take longer after the 10 years or the 5 years respectively until they can catch up to some of the more high priority ones. So there are two things that I need to tell you about this question you asked. Number one is if you have a secret, it's 10 years, it's good for 10 years. So if you know what date you got it granted, then you know how many years you have left. That should be simple. You should know when you got it granted. For top secret, 5 years. But let's say you forgot and you just want to make sure that you're, again, in phase 4, planning the how, and you want to get your clearance updated or reviewed so you can have another 5 or 10 years. So if you don't know when you did, then you got to go to JPass or have your SSO go into JPass to look into it. There's another way you can do this. If you know a company that has access to JPass, you can request that their FSO, their facility security officer, look at your record. Now, keep in mind, and I'm giving some PII information here, that you have to provide your social security number and your full name so they can look into your record. But they can check that out. You can also call DSS. I'm pretty certain that they would help you out. That's the last resort, though. I mean, I truly never have DSS give me information about my clearance. But whoever holds your clearance should be able to give you that information. They own your clearance. They should be able to give you that information. That's obviously if you are on active duty. Was there another part to that question, Abe, or was that pretty much what?
Yeah, there is actually a follow-up. So let's say you're interviewing with a prospective employer. What steps do they need to take so that they can check to see what the status of your clearance is or if it is lapsed?
So on the second part of the question, so let's say that you are out or it's lapsed and you want to know how to get it back. That's a tougher one. I've had a lot of great people that I've interviewed unable to take a job because their clearance was pretty much expired. Let's use that word. When your clearance expires, it's very hard to get it back. Like if you're within 30 days, it's easy to just reactivate it. Somebody else can pick you up. Ideally, you want to transition that clearance as soon as you get out to a company that has a facility security office, that has a facility clearance that can pick you up. Again, I'm using some slang terms. They can pick you up from JPass from the account of your current MMO, it's called MMO, to your new account, which is a civilian entity. Because usually, if you're on active duty, an agency owns you. Most of the clearances are owned by DoD because it's military personnel we're talking about here. So we're going to talk only about the military folks that we're catering to. So your DoD will hold your clearance. You have to figure out first how long before it's due to expire. But if it already expired, you have a couple of options. Number one, if it's within 30 days, you can get it reinstated if somebody else picks you up. Now, there are some concessions you're going to have to make, and this is getting now into the negotiation of salary and compensation. If you know you want a job and they're not giving you the amount you want, and there's a gap between what you want and what they are offering you, try to negotiate them submitting you in for a clearance for a PR, for a periodic review. Listen, I'll take the job at that salary, but can we also include that you will put me in for reinstating my clearance? And with that caveat, you can take the job. Now, that's a good way to negotiate your salary. Listen, everything is open for negotiation when you're trying to take a job and when a company wants to take you and hire you. So don't leave that off the table. The second thing you can do is apply for jobs where the government, not a government job, but apply for jobs with government contracting companies where the government will allow for you to take the job and put you in for the clearance. So the government will sponsor the clearance while you're on the job. That's very difficult, but it happens. Sometimes it happens. Ideally, the government wants you to hire people. In this case, we're a government contracting company. We hire folks, and we have to have them with clearances. They have to have an active clearance. It cannot be expired. But in very few cases, the government will accept a candidate that had a clearance or where their clearance elapsed, or even that they didn't have a clearance. Like let's say your spouse wants to get a job, and you assume that she won't get it because it requires a clearance. Don't leave that off the table. You can always ask, will the government take me without a clearance or with a lapsed clearance and allow me to get the job and then submit for the clearance. I think they give it a 6 months period where you can get granted a temporary clearance status or what's called public trust, and then you go from there to secret, and from there, depending on whether the job needs it or not, you can go to top secret. But that will be the second part of the answer to that question. You will really have to try to work a way where there's a government contract that you can actually get a clearance. I'm sorry, that you can get the job while you're getting the clearance done. So that answers that question.
Great, excellent, Cesar. Thank you so much. And that's
Right.
that's an important thing to keep in mind. Depending on what path you want to take, is your clearance going to be necessary? And if you're able to maintain that as part of your transition plan, that'll help you out tremendously. So thank you, Cesar, for those for answering those questions.
Welcome.
So when we were chit-chatting, so just so you know, as part of producing a show, we actually do show prep, right? Surprise, surprise. And Cesar and I, we were chit-chatting about some people that he has helped. And he actually got an email the other day. And what I like about this is this is because they've stayed together as part of a network, right? They're a professional network. And so Walter emailed, and he actually had a very interesting question in regards to an opportunity for him because his wife is Air Force, correct, Cesar?
Yeah, she just got commissioned in the Air Force. Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations on that. And so she's being transferred to a new duty station, and so Walter reached out to you, and tell us how this conversation went.
So yeah, we were talking about this offline because Abe asked me, from the people that you help transition, do you have a story that you can share that allows the audience to relate to how anxious they were when they went to one of your seminars, and how are they now? This is real life. I mean, and guys, I don't do this because I'm trying to convince you to buy a vacuum cleaner. I'm doing this because I walked a mile, like many of you have, like many of you are, and like many of you will. And I'm telling you, it is not the type of fog of war you're used to. And when I look at the faces of the folks that I talk to and I do these workshops for, I can see it in their eyes, but they won't say it in their lips that they're anxious. They want to scream and say, why does it look like everybody else has it together except me? Why does it look like everybody has a plan, but I am just overwhelmed with questions and no answers? So Walter was one of those guys, and I was telling Abe about Walter because Walter was one of those types, like I said at the beginning of the program, that are just spectacular. They're really great at being the first information. They're ahead of the pack. They're meritoriously promoted. They're constantly planning ahead. Those are the types that I have a hard time with because they want to get everything done early. And they're the ones that experience the most anxiety. And so Walter was in one of our seminars. I think we had about 300 people. And he just wasn't sure whether he would be marketable. I remember looking at his LinkedIn profile. If I ever get a chance, I'd like to see if Walter, when he comes on the show, he can show us the LinkedIn picture he had. Let me say one thing about LinkedIn pictures. Hey, make sure I don't get stray off. I know we're on the time clock here, but LinkedIn pictures. LinkedIn is not Facebook. So if you have a picture of you and your honey at a wedding and you're cropping that picture here and you think that nobody notices that you just did that, we all notice. And if you have a picture of yourself with your family and the dog, or you have the candy cane tie, or your LinkedIn title says unemployed looking for a job, you suck. And that's wrong. And I'm calling you out right now. And
calling
if you're
you
one
out.
of those folks out there, I better see you change that picture tonight because I'm going to expose you, right? Walter had one of those pictures. And it's funny because a lot of our military veterans will do the other picture, the one that you are standing like this. I'm trying to move my chair here. And you are, I'm sorry, I'm going to look at the camera. So 45-degree angle turn, and then the face towards the camera, and they take the picture. That's your promotion picture.
There you go.
And we're used to the promotion picture. And of course, they're like, with no smiles. I mean, You want to be personable when you hire. Remember the brand, you're creating a brand. Even if you work in a super secret squirrel facility, 10 floors underground, and where there's 10 ways of getting into the facility by biometrics, I don't care. You wake up in the morning, you put your pants the same way, be personable, right? Change that LinkedIn picture. Walter did. He changed the LinkedIn picture. I went through his resume, which also sucked. It was one of the worst resumes I've seen. And he had so much potential. I remember talking to him about his skills. He said, I feel like I shouldn't say that I am a certified instructor. And I said, why? Oh, because I got the certification through the Marine Corps profession of the formal school for Marine Corps instructor training. And he felt like that wouldn't be recognized in the civilian world. Can you imagine that? Crazy. So Walter felt like it wasn't honorable to say that he was certified through the Marine Corps. I'm here to tell you, fellas, ladies, you get a certification in the military, any certification, that is gold, that is valid, because very few people can do it. As you know, only a very few percentage of the population can serve in our country's military. You are one of the most amazing people in our country. You served, whether you served 2 years or 50, you served. You made that decision that you would sacrifice. You would make the ultimate sacrifice. So anything you get, education, training, certification, it's valid. We reworked Walter's resume, Abe, and it was amazing. He got a job immediately. And funny because at that time he was, his wife was I want to say graphic designer. Angie was a graphic designer. By the way, Angie, if you're listening, congratulations on your commission as a second lieutenant in the Air Force. Look at that. Retired Marine gunnery sergeant, now supporting his wife who's starting her military career. Now, I wish that Walter can tell you today, if he could go back 5 years and talk to himself, that anxious gunny who was trying to get out, he would tell him, calm down, plan ahead, and focus on one step at a time. Now, today, back to your point, they're moving to New Mexico, and he sent me an email saying, hey, listen, Cesar, I had a great career here. My wife is now commissioned in the Air Force. They're moving her to New Mexico, to the Air Force base there. Do you have anything out there? Immediately, I put him in touch with my recruiter to see if we can have a position there, because Walter is one of those exceptional people, like many of our military folks, that you put them in a job and they would just explode with success. And I also referred him to 3 of my company partners, to see if they had a job in that area, because he is an incredible performer. He's an ISD, and he is actually able to do curriculum development from soup to nuts. So if you're out there looking for a curriculum developer, look at Walter Layton on LinkedIn and offer him a job right now. I am telling you, he will make a company successful. He worked for Booz Allen, and I can assure you that they are not picking the bottom of the barrel. So if you want a guy out there in New Mexico, Walter, I hope that you get many offers. Remember, compensation, not salary, and be willing to compromise.
So, Cesar, I just wanted to add on really fast to something you said. Walter said that he went to the school and for the Marines, and didn't feel like that was worth putting on his resume. Okay. You need to put it on because it shows that you accomplished that type of level of education. It is valid, it is important, but then take it one step further is what have you accomplished because of that? And then how much value can you bring to your hiring organization because of that education or that opportunity? And these hiring managers and business owners, they love to see those results-based resumes.
Yeah, one of the things I talk about in building your resume, and this is now you're getting into the whole resume process. By the way, I want to let the audience know that when I'm looking down into my right, I'm looking at you on the screen. So if I'm not focusing on the audience, I mean, I'm not a professional live, you know, host, whatever they call them. I'm just a Marine trying to share as much knowledge as I can to as many of you as I can, because I can't go to place and do these events that I used to do. I need to make sure I reach everybody. So I want to apologize. And I also want to apologize to my Coast Guard friends. I was not able to get a Coast Guard flag, but as you know, as I told you earlier, I'm traveling, and I really wanted to make sure that the scene looked, professional, and it was patriotic. And I want to apologize to my Coast Guard friends for not having their flag here, but you're in my heart, and you are represented by the Navy, of course, as well. As you know, in combat, you guys fall under the Navy, but ultimately, I want you to know that it wasn't an oversight. So don't send me your comments and your hate emails telling me that what happened to the Coast Guard flag. I got you covered. Back to the point that you were making, the resume process itself. It's a very science and art. You have to not only put in things like your objective, your core competencies, and a professional page of what you've done, but in those bullets, in what you're referring to is quantifiable achievements. When I look at a resume, I look at the first word of each bullet. If every bullet there says achieved, assisted, developed, planned, I realize it's a canned resume, right? If you're going to be in a leadership position, you have to be supervising, you have to be implementing. Those action verbs in those actionable bullets have to have quantifiable information. Quantifiable versus qualifiable, their subjective bullets say amazing professional that can accomplish work in a limited amount of time. That didn't tell me anything. Tell me what you accomplished, when you did it, what was the result of that. That's what you're alluding to in your comment. The resume, I think we should do one on resumes, one of these podcasts on resume, to really dissect the resume and go section by section to focus on that. And that could be part of our branding a podcast, where we can talk about how do you brand yourself, both from your name, your email address, LinkedIn profile, your resume, and everything in between.
Great. Excellent, Cesar.
All right, what do we got next? Let's
All
jump.
right.
I know we're running. We're trying to catch up to the clock here. So
yes, absolutely. And that personal brand is really important. And so stay tuned. Subscribe to the channel so you can keep tabs on when these next episodes are coming out, because there is definitely going to be a lot more coming down the road for you in the next couple of weeks. So please definitely subscribe to the Transition Success Podcast with Cesar Nader. And so Cesar, when we started, we talked about having to have a plan for when you're going to get out. And we like to end these episodes sharing an affirmation quote is what we call it, something to give us motivation to make sure to carry us on until the next week and we're able to gather together again here on YouTube, right? And so General Eisenhower gave us a great quote on planning. Cesar, why don't you go ahead and share that with us?
Well, and thank you for selecting this quote. I love it because it's very, very relevant to what we're talking about here. Eisenhower said, "In preparing for battle, I have always found that plans are useless, but planning is indispensable." That summarizes the reason why you have to plan 2 years out for your transition. You have to have a point of departure, because every military professional knows that no plan survives first contact. But if you have a plan, you have a point of departure. You have a way for everyone to understand what the commander's intent is, no matter how astray the plan goes. Have the plan, share with your family, discuss it with your personal board of advisors, and give them an opportunity to help you figure out how to go from transition to transition success. If you don't plan, you are letting Murphy plan for you. Planning is so indispensable for your transition that it goes right alongside of you having a clean bill of health from your doctor. Transition effectiveness comes from the constant assessment of your position, your level, your stage, your phase, your composition, your family composition. So you have to plan early. You'll be surprised how quickly the anxiety stops, how you start to get better rest at night, and how well you start to develop a plan that's more effective for you to get a career and not a job. So remember this quote as you're thinking about why you need to plan early. Thanks, Abe. I really appreciate you with that quote. So we want to thank you for watching the Transition Success podcast. It's been incredible. Abe is our producer. I am your host, Cesar Nader. We will be back live next Wednesday at 2000 Eastern Time. And I do want to ask you to tell us if this time and date helps you guys be there. And remember, we never leave a veteran behind. Let's work together to make sure everybody has a successful transition. Semper Fi. God bless you.
Good night.